So the first one I'm going to go through is just the kind of concept that we talked today about open strings being kind of like the magic sauce of guitar. You know, it can immediately take something and just make it even cooler. So you were playing a riff earlier today that sounded kind of like this. It was like, or something like that. It's kind of a minor pentatonic idea. And the way I had adapted it is I'm just using that first shape of the minor pentatonic instead of doing the A minor pentatonic. I believe we talked about this at some point in time, probably like way back into our first lessons, because it's one of the first things I talk about with people, is the minor pentatonic scale, the first shape, with the root note being on the low E string and the high E string. Now what I was doing is when you were getting to that A string, instead of playing it up here on the 5th fret, I used the open A string and started building from there. Then you went up to B, so I played A, B on the open A string up to the 2nd fret, and then you went all the way to the D on the E string. Instead of doing that, I can go, so I only need to use my finger once, my left hand, like that. So try just messing around with that pentatonic area. Continue to write riffs, but instead of creeping up the neck, try to use open strings whenever possible. So that means kind of figuring out what notes you're using, the actual pitch name, and ask yourself, is that a note I can use as an open string? Because if it's an E minor, chances are you can, because all of the open strings are not G minor, E minor. They're all in E minor. So you got a lot of options. In fact, that other lick that you played, this is the second one, you went, what was it? Something like that. We were talking about adding double stops. Instead of doing the... That's a good idea, I like the double stops, but in order to countryfy a little bit, instead of using the perfect fourth interval, perfect fourth is what it's called, we're going to use thirds. We're going to harmonize this note with a third. We're going to place a third below. Now I'm keeping it within the key, which means even though this is moving up a whole step, 2 frets, in order to harmonize this properly, I'm going to use just these, just a half step. The reason for this is the 3rd degree of the scale, this is the 4th degree of the scale in E major, this is the 5th, and this is the 6th. If I change it to just moving around the shape, it's a little too crazy. That's more of like a Jane's Addiction song or something like that. Yeah. So we got those 2 licks. That's the other thing, is you could just even use just an open E string. And just like that. All of a sudden, instead of just this, which sounds pretty cool, that immediately sounds much cooler though, right?
How'd you get that? Were you hitting 2 strings?
I'm just playing notes on the B string and then just adding what is called an E pedal. A pedal, the name is derived from the organ. Playing a pedal tone is just holding down one of those bass notes. You can do the same thing on the guitar just by letting one string ring out while we play on another one. Pretty cool, right? So, open strings is a thing of magic. Here's the next thing, is the not the rock and roll cowboy, but the should have been a cowboy solo. It goes like... Okay, so, next thing, should have been a cowboy. That's it. That's all. Alright, you ready? Cool, so here's the Folsom Prison solo that I wrote. First half is just like the original. Right, a lot of open strings. But then, I start using a backwards banjo roll. Those are the chords. last half of that was just improvised, but it's easy to do when it's really slow. So.